and the invocation by Vice Mayor Osborne.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please bow your heads. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time and freedom of being together as we discuss and debate the finances and the future of our city. As in Romans 3 and 4, you have directed that we glory in tribulation, knowing that tribulation worketh patience, and patience experience, and experience hope. We have great patience and hope for our city, and we thank you for the blessings you have bestowed. Our state's natural beauty has seen great destruction recently from fire. We thank you for the safety and protection of our nation's firefighters, and we have great expectation for rebirth in these areas. As always, forever in our hearts, we pray for the continued watch over our military men and women and all who serve their fellow man. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Joanne. There are no expenditures to approve or ratify, so let's begin with the communications. Oh, thank you so much. Roll call.
Would you like me to read?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Osborne,
Here.
Councilmember Pizzillo,
Here.
Councilmember Loretano,
Here.
Councilmember Campbell,
Here.
Councilmember Gelzer,
Here.
Councilmember Stitt,
Present.
Mayor Lord.
Here.
All are present.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. All right, the first communication is 2011 IMS Arizona Marathon update. Luke Albert.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Tonight, I'm pleased to introduce Deborah Unjum, who's the founder and race director for the IMS Arizona Marathon, and she's here to provide a recap of this year's event.
Thank you very much, and good evening. Just wanted to recap and thank you for all of your help with our marathon. And if someone shows me how to push the button on the slides, I can give you direction on what we've done this year. Oh, you guys change it when I tell you to? Yes. I have like people. Can you guys see it? You guys have somewhere you can see it also?
Yeah.
All right. We're going to start this year to recap just our marathon growth. And our first annual one, the Integrated Medical Services, was in 2009. And underneath states, you can see that the states were represented our first year were 27 with 44 city partners. And since the beginning, Goodyear has been one of our partners, and we do extend our thanks for that. And we'll skip right down to 2011, where we've increased our states to 39. We've had individuals come from 39 states, and we now have 6 city partners as we have added Buckeye and the city of Phoenix. There we go. Participants, we are very excited about this number. Our growth has exceeded over 200% in 3 years. We have had 241 individuals came from out of state, and of those 241, an average expenditure for a runner is $1,000. So $241,000 was brought in by those individuals, and that is in their airfare, their hotel, and their food. And as you can see, we've increased our participation to 2,434. Our biggest increase is we have added a kids run, and our kids run went to 445 kids. Those kids come from the Arizona School Boards Association schools from all over the state, and they are also, we have partnered with Phoenix Children's Hospital. Those kids all were given back $3,000 to local programs to support their fitness, whether it was a We Fit that they bought or a pizza party of healthy pizzas. Money went back directly to the kids' programs. Next slide. Oh, I like this. City partnerships, as you can see, the interim Mayor Pizzillo is up there representing the city of Goodyear. Thank you, Joe. And we also have Mayor Meck, Mayor Schoaf, and the Integrated Medical Services Director, John Dover. Every year we've had at least 3 mayors on our stage saying thank you to the participants, and it is really exciting. Next year, Mayor Lord, we'll see you up there.
Absolutely.
And we have also seen Councilwoman Osborne participate and put medals around her neck. So thank you very much, Joanne. Next slide. These are just collaborations that we have used, and you can see that our collaborations are all so vast. They actually go all the way over to Scottsdale to the Cancer Treatment Centers of America. And all of these programs just, again, want to support health in our communities. Oh, there's Councilwoman Osborne, too, representing Goodyear in action. Next year, our expo will be held at Live Life Expo in the city of Avondale, and we're very excited about that. It will allow our runners and participants to pick up packets both Friday and Saturday, and it will show again that we're just partnering with all of our cities. This is the kids recap right here. If a kid participated in the rock and roll program, it cost a kid $25 each. They participate in their run on the expo day, which is the Saturday of rock and roll. Our kids participate at our finish line, and it cost them $5 to run in our event. And those were not just the $3,000 we gave back to individual schools, but we've given back almost $15,000 to our schools. And if you guys know the budget cuts that you're having, the schools are having budget cuts also, so it's a huge help for them. We're next. Am I done with my slides? Oh, there we go. These are the donations that we're most proud of. Our committee is 20 people, and they've been on the committee with me for 3 years. And as you can see, our donations back to the community have increased $250,000. Our total give back is $65,000, and it could not be done without city participation. And for instance, our Fit Kids Run, we didn't have to bring people out to lead our kids in exercise program. City of Goodyear Police Department, Fire Department came to our event, and they led our kids in the exercise program and the 1 mile fun run. Again, showing those collaborative efforts. The $65,000 goes back probably about $15,000 to Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. That is the only national organization that we do represent. The rest of it goes back to our local community and the National Honor Society, student councils, all sorts of kids and local programs. And our media recap, our media, we spend approximately $60,000, which is not in hard cash. It is through donations and a media marketing representative. And we have billboards, we have newspapers, and our flyers are distributed all over the country. We send out 400,000 flyers, and in those flyers, the City of Goodyear and all other partnerships with our cities go out also. You guys are very good at putting us in your cityscape and on your website, and in turn for that, we send out an email blast to all of your city residents, and it allows them to get a discount in their registration. It's just about bringing the valley together one step at a time at a discounted rate, and our marathon right now is the least expensive in the United States. It's $35 to register for our marathon, $30 for our half, and the reason it's so inexpensive is because in hard times, gym memberships are the first to go. We want to let you know, put your shoes on, get outside and start walking. You can walk from 1 mile to 26 miles. So, you think I'm done?
That was a wonderful presentation, and I'm going to turn this over because I think we need to have some comments from our council people, because I can remember this started, I remember having a conversation with you on the telephone when this was just a vision, and look what you've done, and you and your committee should be congratulated. It's a great contribution to our city and to the health of our people. But I want to hear from the council, so I'll start down with you, Mr. Gilzer.
I watch soccer. I watch people run. Sorry.
Well, then, Deborah, you have an assignment. You have an assignment for this next one. We're going to get Councilman Gilzer out there some way, okay?
Well, we could use him at the finish line putting medals around children's necks. That's right.
See, I've already recruited someone for you.
Yes.
Sherry?
Well, I've got 2 little kids I'll offer up next year as well. So I just can't say you do such good work.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I have a very good committee and great sponsors. I'm very, very lucky.
Councilman Osborne?
Well, Deborah, you know, you and I go back a long ways, and I have to tell you, this has been a wonderful thing that you've brought together for the West Valley. And Deborah's also the president of Goodyear in Action, and knowing that her heart is around healthy communities, healthy bodies and minds, and with the why, you know, it's all together, and I'm really proud of what you've been able to accomplish. Good job.
Thanks for your
Councilman Stipp?
You know, I think it's wonderful to have such an event in our community to bring everybody together, and it's just one more thing for us to be able to gather around and do, and greatly appreciate the efforts that you and everybody behind you have put in. I think it's It's a wonderful thing.
Councilwoman Campbell?
Well, I'll have to volunteer with you next year because I volunteer for the PF Chain Run every year. So I'll put on my overcoat and I'll come out and help.
Perfect. Yes, this year it rained, snowed, and held. So
That's
you
what
have
I
your
heard.
overcoat. Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Councilman Pizzillo?
I just want to thank you. It was a great event. Not only that, as I recall, it was wet, it was rainy, it was cold, and it was heavily attended. So great job that you put on there. And again, I really enjoyed, being part of it. So again, great job, Deborah.
So with that, a round of applause.
So I'll see everyone next year. Mark your calendars, February 19th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And a quick apology to my new vice mayor. I think I called you a councilwoman. That may happen from time to time, but as you know, Joanna's our new vice mayor of the city of Goodyear. All right, next is on Cox Communication Service and Community Programs update. Sandra?
Madam Mayor, council members, I'm very happy to introduce you to Michael Stull. He is the Manager of Government Relations for Cox Communications, and at his request, he'd like to update you on some things that Cox is doing. Michael?
Well, thank you very much, members of the council, Madam Mayor.
Yes, nice to see you.
It's good to see you, too. We like to do this every couple of years. As you know, we have a license with the city. You extend that for our ability to operate within the community. And so every couple of years, as a partner, we like to come out and talk a little bit about what we're doing, give you an update. So if you have questions from your constituents, you've got a little bit of information to act on. Also, familiar face, so that if there are issues that come up or if you have any questions, you can contact me. I'll pass these cards out real
All
quick.
right, great, thank you.
Great. A new contact.
Real quick, I don't have much time, so I'm going to run through this presentation, some of the highlights of it. And after the meeting, if you have any questions, feel free to drop me an email. Certainly we'll answer them, or we can talk on the phone. Just real quick on the first slide, I wanted to update you a little bit on what we've done over the last few years. Arizona, we are privileged to serve a number of communities in our network, which of course is encompasses Goodyear. We've actually invested about $500 million in our statewide network, including the portions that serve Goodyear here. Right now, the network capacities, depending on how the network's configured, pushes about 2 gigabits per second per customer on the network. To give you an idea, there was a little bit of hype a couple of years ago concerning Google. They had come in and wanted applications from communities to build a fiber optic network to residents and to businesses within specific areas or a specific community. They were only offering 1 gigabit to the end users. We can do double that, so it gives you an idea of exactly what's available right now in the community. Next slide, please. Specifically in the technological advancements area, what we've done since our last visit to you in 2008, we've launched on-demand on our video side. What's interesting is we have 100 unique channels of the HD. The video providers that deliver video via satellite, our competitors, talk about offering channels, but generally they're not unique. They're multiple identical feeds from the coast, that kind of thing, which are not unique. We offer 100 unique channels. Real quick, just on our internet speeds, we offer up to 50 megabits of speed to the end customer at the residential level. Our Cox Business offerings go much higher than that. Right now, our speeds are capable, or our network is capable of well over 200 megabits per second. We'll be delivering those speeds as applications develop that need those types of speeds. Interestingly enough, up at the cable show in Vegas a couple of months ago, Cisco Systems actually tested using a cable system and chain together network of modems, speeds of 1.6 gigabits. So those speeds are capable theoretically capable over a cable network. It'll be interesting to see as we move forward with technological advancements exactly what happens. And then just real quick down at the bottom, we're rebranding our solution stores to make them appear more like you would see in a Mac store or something like that, an iMac store. The reason we're doing that is we're getting ready to launch a whole host of new products and stuff. So we want these stores to be friendly and inviting, where you can go in and sample the products, ask people about questions you might have concerning the products, etc. Right now we have 2 of the stores. They're listed there, but we'll be expanding those valley-wide. Next slide, please. Thank you. What's next? I mentioned a little bit. We're going to be launching wireless 4G service fairly soon. A couple of years ago, we bought a bunch of FCC spectrum, and we're going to be utilizing that to deliver not only handheld service, but also voice video data service to the end user, specifically in homes where our network isn't at right now, and businesses, et cetera. Should be a neat thing. What we're currently working on right now is, you may have noticed, we upgraded our interactive program guide. If you have Cox Television, you'll notice that. We also launched caller ID on the telephone or on the television. You may have seen that come in very recently. And then also, we're getting ready to relaunch a service. It's a lot like if you've seen the home networking Geek Squad types, where people come out to your home and help you network and do those kinds of things. We tested that a couple of years ago, but the economy turned down, and we had to draw that back in for now. But we're looking at launching that again very soon. And then very soon, home security monitoring and alarm system service. We're actually test marketing that right now in Tucson. So it's a neat product. I think it's going to be good. It complements the network. Next page, please. Thank you. Community commitment. Last year, we committed $19 million of cash and in-kind services throughout the valley to charities. A couple of things we do. We actually have a charity in-house. Our employees gave $500,000 to that charity in 2010, over 19,000 hours of volunteer service. We've expanded that charity, Cox Charities, actually to our customers now. As a customer of Cox, if you want to, you can check and give up to $1 on your bill to Cox Charities, which primarily benefits children's charities, children's organizations that assist low-income and needy children. Gives you an idea of some of the, I'm not going to run through them all, but the highlighted or bolded organizations are organizations here in the West Valley that touch Goodyear. There are many more than this, but this is only a sampling. Okay, next page. Thank you. Customer commitment just gives you an idea of some of the J.D. Powers awards that our services have won over the years. Interestingly, on the telephone service, you'll notice in 8 years in a row, 2003 through 2010, we won awards, J.D. Power awards for telephone service. Might interest you to know that we're the largest telephone provider now, residential telephone provider in the metropolitan Phoenix and Tucson areas. So a little bit bigger than just a little cable company from the old days. Network upgrades. We've spent $300 million just on physical network upgrades over the last few years to make the network more dependable. Something else we're doing right now is our network's smart enough now to look at the devices attached to the network for functionality. A lot of times right now we'll see alarms on devices and we're able to go ahead and send a trouble team out to address a malfunctioning device a lot of times before the customer even sees it. So it's decreasing the amount of trouble calls we got. And then home certification program. When our techs go out to homes now, they actually will look proactively at the house and the wiring inside to see if it functions at acceptable parameters. If not, they repair it before there's a problem, before there's a trouble call. The good thing about that is it lowers the number of trouble calls that come into the city staff and also are made directly through to our customer care service. Next page, please. Okay. Just interesting real quick, Cox Business is an arm of Cox Business, or of Cox, excuse me, that handles or serves the business community specifically. Cox started out as a cable company, as many of you know. This entity serves businesses with pretty much all the advanced telecommunications services you're going to find from any telecommunications company. Generally, what we can do is save companies between 20 and 50%. Right below that, you'll see some of the larger entities that are our customers on the Cox Business side. Thank you very much. You guys actually are a customer as well, as is Buckeye, Casa Grande, several other cities throughout the metropolitan area. Real quick, next slide. Just gives you an idea of some of what we're doing in the statewide commitment. We, during the recession, opened an $80 million data center up north. It's actually one of 2 data centers in our entire company, Cox Enterprises. Cox Enterprises owns a number of companies, not just Cox Communications, but Autotrader.com, Cox Newspapers, Cox Television, radio, all kinds of different companies. They need a place to house the data that they use. This is one of the centers in North Phoenix. Also, Cox, Arizona has been selected as a center of excellence. Center of excellence is an interesting concept. What our company does on a nationwide basis is look at the systems that do specific things the best, and they assign on a nationwide basis that task to a specific area. Cox Arizona has been named for or selected as warehouse operation where we move a lot of equipment and stuff as a cable operator, as you can imagine. That's housed here, one of a couple of centers that is housed here. And then also, we're one of two centers in the United States that house our Spanish-speaking center. So we handle calls from all over the United States that handle Spanish-speaking folks. That is it. Certainly will answer any questions if you have any. And I appreciate
Nice
the time.
presentation. Questions from council?
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
I think
Oh,
there is. I'm sorry, Joe,
okay.
did you say? Councilman Campbell?
I was just going to tell you that if you relocate another data center, we'd love to have you in Goodyear.
You
I
have the
was
land, and
curious.
it would be great to have it
How many
here.
people do you employ in your data center? That was.
The data center is pretty small at this point. As you imagine, it's been built to handle future expansion. Right now, it only employs about a dozen people, but it eventually will employ several hundred.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, thank you very much.
Okay, the next one, very important one, is Willow Fire Update. Paul Lutzi, Interim Fire Chief.
Madam Mayor and council members, Paul Louisi, Goodyear Fire Department. I'll just give you a quick update on a couple fires that are burning right now. One is the Willow fire, which is up southwest of Alpine. To date, it has burned just over 500,000 acres, which makes it the largest wildfire in Arizona history. 50 structures are reported threatened, 6 reported damage, 5 residents and 1 outbuilding, and 72 destroyed, 32 residences, 4 commercial, and 36 outbuildings. From a Goodyear's perspective, we've sent several of our members up there to help support the fire itself, 9 to be exact. Some of them were part of the Eastern Arizona Interagency Management Team, which goes out and runs large-scale fires like these. So the training, for one, is invaluable for our members, but also to be part of a large-scale wildland fire like this is just an incredible part to be a part of. So we did have 9 members that were deployed there. Of those members, Firefighter Neil Roberts, Battalion Chief William Bishop, Battalion Chief Russ Braden, Captain Sean Anderson, Captain Nick Lyons, Firefighter Oscar Navarro, Captain Justin Swenson, Firefighter Shannon McClure, and Firefighter Anthony Martin was actually deployed as part of the surprise team. They called out regionally for available firefighters. And because of our team, as we've been training over the last few years, we were able to deploy one of our firefighters to the surprise team. We also deployed our Type 3 engine that was deployed last year, 2 years ago, for the station fire and for the wheel fire up in Williams, Arizona. This was there for 14 days up at the Willow fire, and then was actually deployed from the Willow fire to the Monument fire down in Sierra Vista, and spent about 2 days down there on a fire crew. And then very shortly after, the Willow fire, which is in Forest Lakes, Arizona, was burning, and they reactivated the incident management team, and again, some of those members were deployed there. They quickly got containment on that fire, and within a day, the Wash fire started burning in Heber, Arizona. So currently our members are deployed there, 4 of them, and they are due to return back to us in the city of Goodyear on Wednesday, June 29th. So we've had a very active wildfire season, and our members have been getting some really valuable experience for them. So I'm open for any questions.
Thank you very much for that briefing. Do we have any comments from the council? Yes.
I told John to pass this along, and I don't know if you were at the last meeting. We're landowners up in Alpine, so we went up the day that they let people back in, and that was one of the most beautiful parts in the state. So people haven't gone up there, don't realize how much is burnt. And I want to say thank you. I have some other friends that have cabins up there, and we talked to many of the full-time residents. And I told them our fire department was up there, and wanted to express the thanks, because I don't think people realize what hard work that is. They were telling me embers the size of baseballs were coming down, causing fires. And in Alpine, only 1 house was lost. It burnt, and I don't know if it was back burning or however, but fire men and women from across the state and the West were able to stop that at people's houses and save houses. And I am just amazed at the hard work. And I heard from some neighbors who were evacuating as those cinders are coming down the sides of baseballs. They're like, we wouldn't want that job. So thank you so much. And Joanne's son is up there now, and thank you too.
Any other comments?
I'll pass that message along.
Yes,
Thank you.
Councilman Stipp.
Chief Louise, just, I obviously know the answer to this question, but for everyone else's benefit, what is the cost for the city? How does that work out? We've deployed people for a long time.
Sure. The deployment comes through the Central Arizona Council, and you sign up to get on these teams and then be deployed. But essentially the minute they leave the city in our equipment, they are paid for their time through the federal government and through the state Forestry Service. So everything is reimbursed, as well as if we require any backfill for the firefighters that are out, their overtime is also reimbursed by the state and also by the federal government as well. So all of that, in addition to the vehicles, is reimbursable for the city of Goodyear.
Well, we're very, very proud of our fire department, and we appreciate the additional work that they have undertaken to help our state. And I just have to say to the public, how did you feel when you got out of your car today and walked out of your car to the next building? It was hot, wasn't it? Well, you can just imagine what it's like to have the weather and then the flames and the heat. I mean, it's just an incredible job you're doing. Thank you so much. And let's give a round of applause for our fire department. Okay, now is the time for a citizen's appearance from the floor. And a few directions. Before you begin to speak, please identify yourself clearly, for the record, your name and address. And for the council, we will listen to your comments, and council, you may take any one of the following for criticism if there's no response, all right, unless it's criticizing and you feel like you need to say something. So you'll respond to criticism. We'll request, if you feel it's necessary, to the staff to investigate and report on the matter. And the request that the matter be scheduled on a future agenda. So, City Clerk, are there any cards?
Not for this area.
You mean after my wonderful finally speaking and saying what I'm supposed to say, nobody's coming up?
The other.
Oh, okay, all right. So now we'll go to the consent agenda, and I will ask the City Clerk to read the consent agenda items by title only, please.
Item A, approved draft minutes of a work session and a regular meeting held on May 9th, 2011, a work session and special meeting held on May 16th, 2011, and a work session and a regular meeting held on May 23rd, 2011. Item B, adopt ordinance 11-1240, repealing ordinance 10-1209, and reinstating subsection 12-3-1A of Chapter 12, Sewers, of the Goodyear City Code as previously adopted by ordinance 06-1012, providing for severability and an effective date. Item C, adopt resolution 11-1432, authorizing the city manager to execute an intergovernmental agreement with the Arizona Department of Transportation for the traffic signals at I-10 and Bullard Avenue. Item D, approve a use permit to allow a public utility facility on lot number 373 within Sedaya Parcel 2A, generally located at the northwest corner of Citrus Road and Campbell Avenue within the Sedaya Planned Area Development, subject to stipulations. Item E, accept the dedication of rights-of-way and public utility easements by Goodyear Charter Properties, LLC, an Arizona limited liability company, and Goodyear School RB, LLC, an Arizona limited liability company, for a portion of the north side Harrison Street, approximately 1/2 mile west of 175th Avenue. Item F, approve the map of dedication for a portion of North Citrus Road between Indian School Road and Camelback Road, adjacent to the Sedaya Planned Area Development. Item G, approve amendment to Sports Facilities Use Agreement with the Cleveland Indians and the Cincinnati Reds. Item H,
Adopt Resolution 11-1433, authorizing the city manager to submit a pass-through grant application to the Gila River Indian Community that will provide funding for Banner Health Foundation, providing for an effective date. Item I, adopt Resolution 11-1434, authorizing the city manager to submit a pass-through grant application to the Gila River Indian Community that will provide funding for the New Life Center, providing for an effective date. Item J, approve the participation agreement for Corgate Wash Water Reclamation Facility improvement between City of Goodyear and NMP 111-Estrella Mountain Ranch, LLC.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the audience that would like to remove an item?
Yes, I have a card from Gary Gibbs that would like to remove item G.
G. Is there anybody from the council that would like to remove an item?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Osborne?
I would also like to remove item G, but I also had a question on item H.
Okay, should we do?
I'll have questions on G, but I'm sure it'll piggyback with some
Okay,
of the
so
others.
G is, so are you asking for presentation, or are you asking for,
Well, somebody's asking it to be pulled, so from the audience, right?
Mr. Gibbs has asked that G be pulled. I don't know if Councilmember Osborne has just a question on H.
No,
or-
I wanted to hear
want
the
to
full
pull it, too.
presentation. Yes.
yes?
I've got a couple as well. G, H, D. And the only reason I'm asking that we pull those is I've got multiple questions. J, I've got one question. So I don't know if we need to pull J or just ask the question when it comes up, but
Shall we just start,
Go ahead and ask the question, and if we can answer it,
then
we
we
certainly
can
will.
keep it in there. So which one do you just have a question on?
let's start with J. That
J.
will be the simplest question for me. Okay, J is the Corgate Wash. The question that I have basically starts with the very last page of the proposal, or the summary of the terms agreement. The cost of the project, including design costs, construction management, et cetera, shall not exceed the amount that has been requested by the budget. They can mutually agree to scale back the scope of the project or decide not to proceed with the improvements at all. Is that are we still cost sharing? If we get to the point where we say, we're just not going to do this, are we still cost sharing in that same, what appears to be 60-40, 65-35?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Stipp. My name is Keith Brown, Assistant City Engineer. The agreement allows for us to go through the design of the facility and then develop a cost estimate. And before we move on to construction, we have the opportunity to review that cost estimate and the costs associated with that, make sure they're within budget. This provision just basically allows us to make the best decision to move forward in keeping within the budget. The option of not moving forward is, I think, just put in there as a fail-safe that, yeah, if we can't agree, then we'll go back to the drawing board, basically.
Who bears the burden of the cost?
The cost would still be shared by the city and the developer, 50% of the design costs to the city, 50% to the developer.
Okay. Then kind of on that, the second bullet, or the next bullet beyond that then, talks about the city being responsible for the environmental and regulatory permits. Has that been figured into the cost of this?
That would all be part of the identified in the design, at the design stage, and as we move into, again, beyond the design stage, that would be an additional.
It's outside of the budget of what we've kind of anticipated for the budgets. It's outside of that? Or is it in?
Well, I don't know the answer to that for certain, but let me defer to Gary. Do you know the answer to that?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Jerry Postma, Deputy Director for Public Works. The amount needed for the fees for the permits will not be known until we actually have the drawings and the submission to the county and the state.
Okay, so there's no, it's not in there.
It's anticipated to be in that $330,000 roughly dollar amount that the city's going to contribute. But until we get those design figures, we really don't know.
Okay. And then my final kind of generic question then with this is, there's we're going to go ahead and do this, option B, assuming it's approved, and then we're going to re-rate it. Well, it's already been rated incorrectly. So who's going to do the re-rating to fix?
It will be done by ADWR.
Is that who did the first one?
I don't know who did the first.
Yes, Jerry? Is it ADEQ?
That's why we're
Excuse me.
redoing the whole, that's why we're doing the plant.
Excuse me, it's actually the Maricopa County. Once the plan review is complete, they come out and do a complete inspection of the facility and make sure that it was designed and installed appropriately with the plans that were approved. And at that time, they give us the rating of the facility.
So the original rating is the reason that we're having to put these additional filters in, is not, it's too high, the way I'm getting this?
There's actually many items that are being addressed in this. It goes really to not just the rating of the facility, but because we have no ability right now to produce on a consistent basis A+ effluent.
Okay.
The majority of this is, the goal is to produce the A+ effluent, which then can be used in a beneficial manner for the developer or for the development in that area. And right now, that resource is not available to anybody's use. It goes into a wash. So the major goal here is to use that reclaimed water in a beneficial manner.
Right, and that's very clear in the documentation, but my ultimate question was, all this, these 30 or 40 pages start out with, we need to, that the Estrella Mountain Ranch developer believes are already meeting the need and now have agreed to move forward with this. So I'm curious, if they agree to the number that's already in place, who put that number in place, and is it the same company that's going to redo it, or are we going to a third party that's going to be the official decider, if you will?
And I believe the answer to that, Mayor Lord and Councilmember Stipp, is that Maricopa County, once the plans have been completed, they've been approved, the construction has been approved and completed, they will come out and do the inspection. The final inspection will determine what the rating of the plant is.
Okay. Did they do the first one?
I believe they did, but I was not around when that occurred.
All right, thank you.
So does that satisfy you that I can leave Jay on?
No, I'd like to have it separate.
Can I give you a little
Yes.
history on
Yes,
this one?
I
Yeah,
appreciate
let her rip.
that.
The original design was built by the lowest bidder, and was not up to the current city standards. And for the last several years, there has been discussions going on between the developer, who says it's rated at this high level, and the city, who says no, it's not rated at this high level because it can't produce Class A effluent. And as a result of this, there has been some type of compromise to, one, improve the facility, two, get it rated by an outside, source that will, one, provide A+ effluent, two, provide a rating that both parties can live with, and, end the history of, you built a cheap facility that is, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
And that was clear in the documentation, so I'm not disputing that whatsoever, but my question was if it's already been rated by Maricopa County as, 11 million gallons a day, and it's only capable of producing 6.5 million gallons a day, we're going to go through all this effort and this expense, and they're still going to say, now it's capable of 25 million gallons a day, and we'll never reach that. That was the genesis of my question is, are we chasing our tail on this, or?
So do you want to pull it for a separate vote? Is that what you're saying? Or are you satisfied with the explanation discussion that you've undertaken?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, we've been negotiating this for approximately 2 years now, and it's very important for the developer that this move forward. We finally got to the point where we reached this agreement, and we heartily recommend it. It's time that it move forward.
Okay,
It's been a very difficult one, I can tell you
my
that.
questions are answered.
Okay, so I'm going to put that back on to the, thank you very much. Okay, next was D. Somebody asked a question on D? No. D?
Yeah, that was me
Okay,
too.
well, you're on again.
We chose lot 373 in the exhibit to put this facility in.
Bill, be sure you're talking right into the microphone, would you please?
I'm trying to read and talk, sorry.
I know, it's very difficult.
It is right at the entrance to the, if that second phase or the next phase that it's actually in is developed, before the Arizona American Water Company builds the permanent facility, if people move into that area, the very first thing they're going to see when they enter their neighborhood is the treatment facility. And what we've done is we're allowing them to build a 12 by 12 prefab building protected by a 6-foot wall. So there'll still be 6 feet of this prefab building as welcome to my neighborhood in that community. Is there a specific reason that that lot was chosen as opposed to, and I think I know the answer, but I need to ask the question.
Madam Mayor, council members, Steve Kretschy with Planning and Zoning. That lot is,
Do you mind turning it right here to us? Thank you.
Steve, can you go to the Exhibit 2? That'll help us really talk about what I'm driving at.
the water line serving this Phase 1 part of Sadea, and that is all of that area there.
I want to put it right here.
In that southeast quadrant. That water line runs down Citrus Road, and that was a close connection between that lot running a pipe over to Citrus Road and then providing service to that Phase 1, which is what this facility was meant to serve.
That was kind of what I suspected. If you look at the cul-de-sac directly parallel to that, where the line comes through it, that end lot there, not that I want to tell you where to put it, but would have obviously removed that problem of, welcome to my neighborhood, let's drive past the water treatment building. Because the people living in that particular section of that subdivision, the way in is right down that road. And I know we aren't going to landscape this until the next phase is developed. I don't know where Phase 2 is, and if this is that Phase 2 area, is it?
Yes, this is
Oh, that's Phase 2. So if we start developing in there, we're going to decorate that particular area, is that correct?
yes, sir.
Okay. I'm good on that. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And you're fine with that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so I'll put D back on. Now we're looking at H.
Mayor Lord, we still have Gary Gibbs who asked to have that
I knew
item
that. Should
pulled.
I was kind of waiting until G, or do I need to bring him up now and do G? I was just kind of working back up.
Okay.
Is that all right? So I know that, because we have several of our council people and Mr. Gibbs, so I'll let him come to the floor first before I let the council. Okay, so at H, who had question on H?
I did.
Oh, we have two of them. Oh, say, let's start with Vice Mayor.
Somebody else.
Okay, we'll take the heat off of you right now and put it on her.
Just simple question. Is this a for-profit hospital?
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. I'm Christine McMurdy. I'm your Intergovernmental and Grants Program Coordinator. And with me tonight from Banner Estrella is Pat Elder, who's the Director of Corporate and Foundation Relations for Banner Health Foundation. Pat, can you come up real quick? Let her answer that question.
Good evening. Banner Health and the Banner Health Foundation are a nonprofit entity.
Okay, I was just making sure this was not a for-profit hospital asking for grant money. Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so that one's
That
all
was
right?
my question.
Okay, so that's back on. All right, so, I'm
There were other
sorry.
questions.
I'm sorry about that. Councilman Stipp.
I had the same question, but connected to that. Is the Gila River Indian Community Grant Program done exclusively for the benefit of the local governments that surround it? Isn't that the idea behind the legislation?
Mayor Lord, Council Member Stipp, the 12% revenue sharing program that the tribal organizations are required to fund to local governments is specifically for local governments, but they do allow nonprofits to receive money through the local government. So it is geared to local governments, but they actually invite several nonprofits to apply for this funding. And in the case of Banner Health, they were specifically advised that their application would be welcomed by the Gila River community. So that's when they approached the city of Goodyear and asked if we would pass through their request for funding.
Is the $90,000 that this request, is that our allotment of that 12%?
We do not have an allotment. That is an arbitrary figure that any nonprofit can come up with a dollar amount. There's no restriction or limit to how much you can request from any of the tribal authorities.
Did we as a city have anything to request through them?
We are not we are not applying to Gila River this year. We are passing through two applications. At this time, they have a deadline for June 30. There will be another grant funding cycle later this year. We met with their special funding program manager last week, introduced ourselves, got to know what their priorities are, and we're very pleased to find out that they're actually very interested in knowing more about Goodyear. We brought up the opportunity to maybe invite them into the city, take them on a tour. We actually are very close to one of their communities on our southern border. So this opened a very, possibly very productive dialogue, and they are looking forward to coming into Goodyear and learning more about us. And we would like to do that in time for their next funding cycle, so they have a better idea of what our community is and how we can work together.
Okay, thank you. That's all my
Okay.
questions.
So, Mr. Gibb, thank you very much. No more questions, right?
I have one more.
Oh,
I
I'm
would
sorry.
like to see the city of
Yes.
Goodyear put their own requests in first and then do communities later. Because if the money can come to our city, we have so many needs that we need to address. And that should be our number one priority.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Council Member Campbell.
Thank you. Mr. Gibbs, thank you for being so patient. I just thought it was much easier just to wait for that, the last, since so many of you are questioning that this evening.
My name is Gary Gibbs, 17562 West Polaris Drive, Estrella, Goodyear. Mayor, Council, I'm requesting this item be pulled for two reasons. First of all, I think because the city has such a considerable investment in the ballpark that virtually anything that pertains to it deserves its own discussion and a separate vote. Secondarily, I think we're looking at trying to right a situation that has gone on in the past by getting the city to pay only a portion of merchant fees, and I'm wondering if the council is not in a position to consider talking to the teams about seeking redress for improperly paying this in the past.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbs. Council, Vice Mayor, I think you had the first question on it.
Well, I have multiple questions and comments.
Do we just
doing
want
this
to
one?
vote on the rest?
Mr. Dahlke is the staff person.
Okay.
Oh, Mike Svets is here. Okay, Mike.
Good evening, Mayor. Council.
Okay, well, Mr. Gibbs did allude to one of my first questions, and that is why did this come up? And who has been paying for this for the past 2 years?
To answer your first question, it came up because processing charges such as credit card fees were not defined in the contract. This actually arose back in late 2008, early 2009, prior to the first spring training season with the Cleveland Indians. Both the city as well as the Indians had raised the issue at that point as we were discussing how we were going to go forward in terms of settlement beyond the season. The contracts did not define processing charges. The teams, utilizing the fact that we had modeled our contract after Peoria and Surprise, had looked at the credit card fees not as necessarily a processing charge, but as an operational cost associated with running the box office, which is the city's responsibility. In the case of both Peoria and Surprise, it is listed as an operating cost, and both Peoria and Surprise do pay 100% of the processing charges associated with credit card fees. And so hence, we had an issue with that because we felt like it was something outside of a normal operating cost, such as staffing, ticket stock, uniforms, so on and so forth.
So for the past 2 years, we've been footing the bill, or?
For the past 3 years.
3 years?
We actually have been, the teams have been working with us in good faith based on the amendment that you have in place. So we have been paying 1/3 of the cost. In the first year, the Indians, since they were the only team here, paid 2/3, and since the Reds and Indians have both been here, it's been a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 split.
Why is it 1/3 processing fee for us when we only get 20% of the ticket sale?
That's a great question. And my answer is simply that the team started at 100 and 0. We, in terms of us paying 100%, them 0, based on the city's modeling the contracts after Peoria and Surprise. We held steadfast at 80-20. The teams went to 50-50, and we settled somewhere in the middle.
Okay. When tickets are purchased through the Goodyear box office or the gate, do we have to go through Ticketmaster to process that, and do we pay a fee to Ticketmaster, or is Ticketmaster hooked to our software? How does that go? Because that is one of the processing fees.
It's a little bit different. Ticketmaster controls ticket sales through internet, phone, and their outlets. If somebody walks up to our box office or one of our portable ticket offices out in center field, we have our internal system called ArcTix, and that is tied back to the city's credit card fee processing rates and so on and so forth. So the two are separate.
Okay, so if I'm in Ohio and I guess I go online to Ticketmaster to purchase a ticket, and I'm purchasing a $25 seat, okay, and do I then pay a $2 fee to Ticketmaster for processing it, or is it my $25 seat the same as Goodyear box office $25 seat, but we end up having to eat a $2 processing fee through Ticketmaster? Do you see what hypothetically those?
We don't end up, to answer the first part of your question, there's been a lot of discussion regarding Ticketmaster surcharges for purchasing tickets via phone or internet, and that is pretty standard for any entertainment ticket. That surcharge is passed along to the customer at that time.
Okay.
So they pay 100% of that surcharge.
Okay.
We pay nothing.
I don't go on Ticketmaster very often, so obviously. Okay. This gets a little more nitty-gritty, but for the past few years, I've been bringing this to the attention of different departments within our city. You know, we're not supposed to be a business, and these are business type of situations. And I can tell you, when it comes to credit card processing, the fees and the percents that are taken out at the end of the day start to really add up. And I'd truly like to know who's determining what credit card processing company we're using. Is the city, or is it the ball teams? Who's making that deal? I mean, are we collecting all the money and then distributing it?
Typically, I think the best way to answer this question, and Mr. Lang may be able to help me a little bit further, but our contract is with Ticketmaster, and they charge us a flat 2.4% credit card processing fee. When we go through our box office, we ride the city's interest rate or processing or fee rate or percentage, whatever you would like to call it. We ride the city's, which I think is at the higher end of that, somewhere in the 2.7% rate. So we are for every credit card transaction, there's a 2.4 to 2.7% embedded cost into the cost of a ticket.
Yeah, and quite frankly, in my opinion, that's too high. However, it depends on what those other fees are. If they're all added up to being a 2.7%, but typically just say Visa or MasterCard would only be more in the 1.65%, depending. But then at the end of the day, the credit card, not the credit card companies, but the processing company will then go and charge you this fee and that fee and that. So and I noticed in your discussion that I guess at the end of spring training, you add up everything and then it gets distributed however it is. But are you including not only the percent the actual Visa, MasterCard, American Express is taking, but are you also adding up the fees that are coming with just the transaction companies themselves?
No, the cost is most definitely the cost that the Visa or MasterCard or American Express is charging Ticketmaster. And then I would imagine that there is an additional
So that's out of our
cost.
control. That's not really a good place to be, quite frankly. And that's something that I think that when we look at, we had community development look at this issue when they were taking credit card payments. We looked at that just even when Parks and Rec over the internet taking credit card payments. And you guys have changed policy, but I think that's something that the city needs to look at either annually or by time contracted periods with these different companies, because that's a very competitive situation out there. And I'm afraid that that's 2.7, that's high. That is very high. So I'm not happy that, it's not 80-20. I know that I don't even want to go on that discussion about 80-20. But I think that this is something that really, truly you need to talk about for our future, and the surcharges with Ticketmaster. Ticketmaster has no problem of giving us those credit card rates. I mean, what do they gain out of this? They probably have some kind of situation set up with those credit card companies or the processing, but we're the one eating at the end. So I would love, I guess, some follow-up when it comes to that, and really, quite frankly, good for the whole city in all of our credit card charges.
Just in regards to Ticketmaster, when we did contract with them, they did provide us a substantial amount of capital investment associated with operating the box office, both in terms of computers as well as software and software licensing. So though they are charging us that credit card fee, and it's probably my best guess that they are making some money on it, there was an initial partnership at the time that we launched the ballpark operation.
Well, I appreciate that input. I think, but that does wear out eventually.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Next, yes, Joe. I'm sorry, Councilman Pizzillo.
Vice Mayor Osborne hit most of my questions. The only follow-up I probably would have to that, and again, I agree. I appreciate You know, you went from a position of 100-0 into 50-50 to 1/3, 2/3. I just wish, because of the environment and with the teams, that they were willing to go to 80-20, because we need the money more than they do, and we could talk about that at another time. But I guess my key question is though, do we bid out those credit cards, you know, the rates and those type of things through the finance? Do we bid those out, Larry?
Could you come to the microphone, please?
They need to check on all this.
Mayor Lord and Councilmember Pizzillo, we have bid those in the past. I just made a note to kind of check what our current practices are based on your comments, and we'll get you information of where we are today and when the last time we've checked on those is.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, anybody else of the questions?
I do have one additional one. Mr. Gibbs hit on it. We've been 3 years into this. If we just look at, you know, the information that you provided to us, said the cost savings to the city by doing this is going to be $25,000 to $43,000 a year. That's what we'll achieve as a savings, correct?
That is correct.
So if we just pluck a simple math number, 30,000 times the 4 years we've been behind, it's $120,000 that the team has, both teams have gotten away with. Any talk about recouping that money?
Mayor Lord, Councilmember Stipp, to clarify, we actually have been settling based on the information that you have in front of you. And so we have not been paying 100%. We have only been paying 33% for 2009, 2010, and 2011. The teams have, knowing that this was going to take time in terms of getting the language where we needed it to be, they have been settling us in good faith based on the information that you have in front of you.
Okay, so we haven't been losing out, and I'll say that with quotes around it, on this money over these last 4 years.
Correct. For example, our settlement this past year, our total credit card fees were $34,902 and change. The teams paid us $23,268 and change. And that has been the practice through our financial settlements at the end of spring training each and every year.
Okay, so this action that we're going to take tonight basically puts all of this in writing in the contract?
We have been doing business this way, and what this does is it codifies it in the agreement through an amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Loretano?
With the Ticketmaster, I know a lot of places with technology change in the last 3 years. Have we looked at other alternatives? Are we in a contract with Ticketmaster? Because with all the smartphones and everything going on, is this something that can be done another way?
I have, we do have a term in terms of that Ticketmaster contract. I will have to check the actual length of it, but I believe it's in the neighborhood of 5 to 7 years.
Okay.
So we would have a couple more years before we would bid that out again.
And then we could bid it out, because I know with the smartphones and everything, a lot of that has changed. You don't have to go through Ticketmaster for a lot of tickets now. You can
Right. The Live Nation is another ticketing agency that has popped up recently and has taken on, some things such as Tickets Now and so on and so forth.
But right now that we're in a contract with them.
We're in a contract right now with Ticketmaster.
Have we tried to renegotiate that by any chance?
We have not at this point, no.
Okay. Would that be a possibility, I guess, to look into?
It would be one of those things that we could check our quote-unquote out clauses within our contract and determine whether we can renegotiate that, break it, and rebid the process.
And that's my concern, because I agree with the Vice Mayor that the 2.4 to 2.7 is a little high, and I know that from what it sounds like, it factors in. I know American Express is higher, and she just told me Discover, we don't take Discover, but I know American Express is one of the higher ones, and some places don't take specific credit cards because it bumps the rates. So that might be something we want to look at rebidding.
Any other questions? So I'm gathering we're going to keep this on for the vote and not vote for it separately? All right, he wants it pulled, so we'll pull that. All right, so let's hear a motion right now for A through F, and I through J.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
I hear a motion by Councilwoman Loretano and a second by Councilman Gelzer. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Pizzillo.
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano.
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell. Councilmember Gelzer.
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Osborne.
Aye.
Mayor Lord.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. So, we'll go to G now, and we'll have can I hear a motion for G? We have to go through a motion for G. Do I hear a motion for G?
Yes, Mayor Lord, I move that we approve item G as read by the clerk.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a first from Councilman Gelzer and a second from Councilman Pizzillo. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Loretano.
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell. Aye. Councilmember Gelzer.
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Osborne.
Aye.
Councilmember Pizzillo.
Aye.
Mayor Lord.
Aye.
It passes 7-0.
Thank you. All right, let's go to the business section. First item is A, is a public hearing for the truth and taxation and for the 2011 final budget. So I will open this presentation now for a public hearing. Staff presentation by Terry Canada.
Madam Mayor, I'll make the first part of this presentation.
all right.
This is on the tax levy and the budget.
Okay.
And as soon as the screen is up there. Before I begin, for the benefit of the public, I'd like to recognize our finance department for the 2 awards that they received this year. One of them, the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. This is the 3rd year that they have received this for the GAFR and that report. The Distinguished Budget Presentation Award, this is the 15th year that the Finance Department, that the City of Goodyear has received this award. As a reminder for the Council, this is the budget process. The tentative budget adoption was on Monday, May 23rd, and this set the maximum expenditure rate for the fiscal year 12, and the budget may not exceed this amount. The final budget adoption and public hearing on the property tax levy is scheduled for tonight, which is what we're doing at this time. Property tax adoption and that's the final step in the fiscal year 12 budget process, is scheduled for July 11th. A couple key elements that are incorporated into this budget. Number one, it's balanced. The budget is presented as balanced as prescribed by state law. The general fund is structurally balanced with ongoing costs supported through available ongoing resources, without the use of reserves or one-time gimmicks. The utility enterprise funds are self-sufficient, including all debt service payments. Secondly, we have been able to manage a couple of reductions within the budget as well. The food for home consumption tax rate has been reduced from 2.5% to 2.25%, which is a direct benefit to the citizens. Secondly, the city's property tax levy is lower, generally resulting in a reduction in property taxes. Thirdly, and the overall budget, total budget, has been reduced by 15% from the prior year's budget of $255 million. It is sustainable. This is the first time in 3 years that the revenue trends are positive. General fund revenue is up 7% from fiscal year 11. We're able to maintain the property tax rate at the city council policy of $1.60. It maintains the existing service levels, and it supports an $11.7 million capital improvement program, mainly funded by development impact fees. In addition, there is no new debt incorporated into the budget. It ensures the city's fiscal stability We just recently had our general obligation bonds upgraded from A+ to AA- by Standard & Poor's, and from A1 to AA2 by Moody's. The budget, it maintains all existing service levels and essential service levels, and it provides for a quality of life within the community through our Parks and Recreation efforts and our Loma Linda Park design, which is incorporated into the budget. Other considerations during the budget preparation, this shows you what's happened fiscal year 9 and 10 HERF. The state reduced the HERF funding in order to go to the Department of Public Safety. Fiscal year 10 and 11, the LTAF, the legislation swept all funding from the LTAF, and that was $259,000. Fiscal year 11 and 12, the HERF fund was attacked again, and the state took $451,000, and that was for the Department of Public Safety and the Motor Vehicles Department. And in fiscal year 11-12, DWR, Water Resources, imposed new fees on all cities, and so we had to come up with an additional $90,000. The total 3-year impact from the state actions has been in excess of $1 million. Other considerations include the staffing history. In fiscal year 8 and 9, we started with 580 authorized positions and 574 funded positions. In fiscal year 11, we're down to 511 authorized positions and 505 funded positions, and this is with the addition of a ballpark in the ensuing years. One of the more notable figures is the employees per thousand, and you have a presentation here of the employees per thousand by individual city. Gilbert is the lowest at 5.55, Goodyear is at 7.74, and Phoenix is the highest at 9.99. And this is very significant because, as you'll see in the next slide, we went from 10.12 employees per thousand to the level of 7.74 right now, or 7.35 without the ballpark. So this is a significant reduction in the employees and the size of the workforce that the city of Goodyear is operating with. The key element of sound financial fiscal management, that's one of the underlying premises of the balanced budget. Effective policies that enhance the fiscal health of the city of Goodyear is one of the underlying principles. This incorporates a long-term perspective. It is sustainable, as I mentioned, and it establishes linkages to broad organizational goals, which is also important. And several weeks ago, the council met in an all-day retreat, advance, and you came up with 4 primary goal areas. One was economic development, one was sense of place, one was quality of life, and one was fiscal management. These are all incorporated into this budget, and we're preparing work plans now for you to take a look at when you get back from break. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Terry Canada to make a final presentation about the items that are incorporated into the budget. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Is this on? Yes. Just a quick slide here. We've seen this before, comparative for the total budget. You can see back in the year, fiscal year 09, we were at $405 million. It's gradually been reduced over the recession period the last few years, and this year the total budget will be $213 million. It does include $73 million for operating. That's general government services, fire, police, includes clerk, mayor, finance, you know, everything that it just takes to run the day-to-day operations. We have 101 in capital and one time. It does include about $30 million from capital from the prior year that will be carried over and rebudgeted. And debt is at $23 million, and again, the rainy day fund or contingency is at $16 million. Where does the $213 million of sources come from? The largest portion is from taxes and surcharges. That would be such items as the property tax, the sales tax, charges for recreation services, court fees, any just general government-related fees that come in mainly through the general fund. The second largest here is the fund balance. And again, a lot of that is from the capital program that would have been earned, or fees that were from the prior year that again are going to be held in fund balance and cover the expenditures for this year. Utility user fees would be charges for services for wastewater, water, and sanitation services, represent about $26 million. On the lower end, we're expecting some grants at 5%. I think it's about $10 million, and development impact fees would represent about $5 million of the total resources. And where the money goes, again, this is the same breakdown as the other slide. $73 million for operations, about 34%. Capital and one-time, again, is the largest percent there. Contingency at $16 million, and the debt service at about 11%, or $23 million. It includes all the debt, general obligation debt. It does include our PIC bonds. There is improvement district, and water sewer revenue bonds are also included. This chart is expenditures by department. Again, recently we've combined the Public Works Department. It represents the largest piece of this pie, if you will, at 27%, almost $20 million. Police and fire represent the next two largest, together about $25 million. The all other encompasses some of the smaller departments. It would be court, city manager, clerk, ECDEV, and attorney. And then we I think it's probably 3 years ago, we created a non-departmental division, and that houses some of the charges that aren't attributable to some of the other direct departments. It would include, the largest portion of that, a little more than $2 million, are payouts or reimbursements for development agreements that we have an obligation to pay. There is a small portion of money for recreation, or not recreation, but it's our R&E committee, the Employee Recognition Committee. And then there's city manager's contingency is in there in the event we have some unforeseen expense that could happen in one of the other departments. And just trying to think. Oh, and then there is grant match of $35,000 that's also in that non-departmental. Okay, this is the second part of the public hearing tonight, which is the notification for truth and taxation. This is somewhat not always straightforward or complicated, so I'll try and explain it, the best that I can here. By law, we are required to not only hold a public hearing on this, but we've also put notification in the paper. Anytime the maximum amount of the levy from the prior year is exceeded, we have to notify that we are doing truth and taxation and that we are raising the levy. And so as you can see here, the primary tax rate is at 160. The maximum amount without the increase will be 6.1, and the maximum levy that we're allowed to by law charge, which is a 2% increase over the prior year, is $123,680. And that kind of what triggers this whole truth and taxation. And as we go forward, I'll kind of break down what the $1.60 rate is made up of and how that valuation has changed over the last year. Okay, and so this is the two components that make up the property tax rate. Of course, the first one is the 603, or the 6.3 million, which is what you just saw from the other slide. That does include the truth and taxation 2% increase amount of $123,000. That goes for general government operations. Operations, maintenance, day-to-day things. Again, it goes into the general fund. It's for your police, your fire, clerk, and general government operations. The secondary property tax is lower than last year, and that's basically because the assessed valuation is down. The rate component of that is also down. The secondary goes strictly to pay for debt service. A couple things to note here, even though the total levy is down 11.6 to 10.7 this year, over the course of the last couple years through council policy, we've shifted the water sewer debt over to the utility funds. So as the assessed valuation has decreased, so has the obligation, if you will, for the property tax to pay for the total amount of general obligation bond. So we've been able to kind of siphon some of that off and put it to the utility funds, and they're able to pay a large portion of the general obligation debt that used to be paid for out of property tax. This again is like a 4-year look back at how the property taxes have remained steady, again, or the property rate has remained steady. The 1.6, again, is the council policy. If you notice in fiscal year 10 and 11, we were able to reduce the rate to $1.42. And again, that was primarily because we were able to, the debt was reducing from the property tax obligation, and we shifted that over to the utilities. Okay, this is kind of where the rubber hits the road, if you will, and what does it really mean to the citizens here? First off, by the council policy, again, we've maxed out the primary tax rate. That will be the allotted 2% by law that we can do that, and it makes the primary rate at 0.94. Secondary rate then is the balance of the 160, so the 160 minus the 0.94 gives you the secondary rate, which again is specifically for the general obligation debt. If you look comparative from 10 to 11, the median home value, according to Maricopa County Assessors for the City of Goodyear, went from 152 to 133. So there's been a decline in assessed valuation. So what happens is even though the rate has went up, the valuation of the houses have went down. So the taxes paid by the citizenry are going to be, they're just a few dollars less. But all in all, they'll go from a tax bill of about $217 for the medium home to about $214. So again, sometimes this is confusing because the rate is increasing, the valuation is going down, and therefore the, like I said, the property tax, the estimated property tax for the average house is going to go down just a few dollars. So with that, I just kind of want to conclude and go over again. We are holding a public hearing on both the tax levy, which would be the truth and taxation requirement by law, and the final budget adoption of $213 million for the fiscal year 12. Approve the truth and taxation, the 2% increase, which was $123,000, and adopt a resolution you'll be voting on for the final budget.
Thank you, Terry. Yes, questions?
Just a real quick one while you're up there, Terry. The one thing, and again, you mentioned the policy about the utilities and the other part. You know, even when I was on the staff, even as I'm now on the city council, I always had an issue, to be honest with you, with people north of 10, you know, paying for things they get no benefit from. We had water and sewer bonds that we sold that were in the property tax, so that means everybody was paying for debt service that only, you know, served the ones south of 10. And not only that, it was for many, many years the actual general fund was subsidizing the actual utility company because they didn't even cover their rates. At some point, everybody realized that, you know, it's an enterprise fund and it should cover its cost. And last year, what in essence happened was, you know, when I was looking through the financials, and I know they were starting to move it looking to this year, but the key question I had was, number one, it looks like the enterprise fund is sound enough that it could start moving some of its money and start paying its fair share of the debt service. And that's how that all kind of came about last year when it dropped, where I thought that 1.5 was sound. We could take it out of the enterprise fund without financially strapping that fund, because after all, it's debt service anyway, and they should be paying that debt, not just people throughout the city, you know. So number one, that's how that ended up getting moved. This year, it's my understanding all of it is over there now, so that we can at least say, or at least I feel comfortable right now saying that nobody north of 10 is paying for debt that supports the city water company, which is south of 10. Is that fair?
correct. All of the
Okay.
utility
So it's all
nets
over there.
support
And the only reason why this matches off, and as I mentioned in the CFD, I'm not a rate individual. I'm a levy guy because levy is the tax, what we're actually paying. And when I had a chance to go back and pull my stuff up through Maricopa County over the last 2 years, my own personal one, versus even counting this drop, mine's gone down 44%, you know. And my biggest concern long term, and this is for the staff, is next year if the rates continue to drop, you know, you have no more enterprise fund debt that's coming out. So that's going to be the biggest challenge for financing, because to me, the rate is simply taking a look at the levy and dividing by the assessed valuation. Now, there's another thing going out there.
Excuse me, Councilmember Pizzolo, we are in a public hearing, and council is going to discuss this after the public hearing.
So,
Sorry.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, that's it.
Thank you, Terry. I'm going to ask for public comments.
I do have several cards.
All right.
The first one is Gary Gibbs.
All right. Mr. Gibbs?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Gary Gibbs, 17562 West Polaris Drive, Estrella, Goodyear. Joe, I guess I'm more of a rate guy than a levy guy. You know, 5 years, 5 of you were just recently elected, and I watched your campaigns closely, as you know. Okay, I was at the public forums, the candidate forums. I read all the newspaper interviews, and I have to say that in none of that did I ever hear anybody campaign on a tax increase. And yet here we are just a few weeks later, and we're on the cusp of doing just that. We're on the cusp of increasing the property tax for residents of Goodyear. I've heard all the excuses. It's not very much money. It's not really a tax increase because it's tied into the levy, you know, those sorts of things. But, you know, a tax increase is a tax increase. And when I heard that phrase, truth in taxation, it immediately became one of my favorite oxymorons, you know, kind of right there with military intelligence, postal worker, honest politician. We haven't been upfront about the fact that this is a tax increase. In the In Focus magazine, there's no mention of it. Talk a lot about the tax decrease, nothing about changing the property tax rate. And I saw something online. You have a budget brochure, a trifold brochure, and there's a bullet point there that says maintain the 1.6 rate. That is frankly a gross misstatement of fact. If you were maintaining the rate, it would be 1.42, not 1.6. To your credit, you've agreed to lower the tax on food, but that's by an incredibly timid 0.0025%. What that means to me is that the next time I go to the grocery store and spend $100, I'm going to save 25 cents. Thanks a lot for that. And on one more tax-related matter, let me read some more words from the In Focus magazine. Council made the tough choice of raising the sales tax temporarily. And of course, that refers to the decision in 2009 to raise the general's tax rate from 2 to 2.5%. He's referring to that, the city manager is in Focus magazine. He said temporary. And the understanding at that time was that in 3 years' time, there was a good possibility that general sales tax increase would be rolled back. I know the mayor, for one, considers increasing that tax to have been an act of political courage. I would argue that it will also be an act of political courage on your part to position yourself to roll it back next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Next,
Howard Broadbeck.
Mr. Broadbeck?
Howard Broadbeck, 15742 West La Riata, Goodyear. The budget you've brought to the citizens of Goodyear does not meet theirs or the city's needs in these economic times. You propose spending that is 8% higher than what you expect to spend this year. 10 line items alone increase year-over-year spending by nearly $4 million. You project revenues that are 75% higher than what you'll earn this year, which is impossible in this economy. In the past year, Goodyear's available debt capacity was cut in half, and you've done nothing to address this looming threat. Instead, you added another $7 million in the past year to the city's already overwhelming debt burden, bringing it to nearly $320 million, or more than 5 times operating revenues. You have general obligation bonds with debt service that is more than double the secondary property tax levy, and you are overcharging residents for utilities and subsidizing the general fund, and you are raising property taxes for struggling citizens. You should throw out this budget, cut in excess of $5 million from it, leave property taxes where they are, and apply the remaining balance of those savings to reducing debt, and you should realize that you're going to have to do this for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next one is Christopher Lovett.
Mr. Lovett?
Christopher Levitt, 9742 South 182nd Drive, Goodyear, Arizona, Estrella. And on the primary tax, we did see a tax increase last year in the primary, about 14% over the rate. This year it's projected about 24% increase, yet we did see a secondary tax reduction last year. In looking at the budget this year, the debt service has stayed flat at $23 million year over year for the last 3 years, including FY12. My proposal to council would be to take the primary tax increase on the first and from the general fund and move that to the secondary to pay down debt. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you. Any other?
No others.
Well, with that, we're going to close the public hearing. And we'll go to item 2. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you not? Mr. Hinkle? I'm sorry. Okay.
Sorry, I thought you were speaking on 8B. Richard Hinkle.
Well, I'm going to open
Yeah,
the
open it
public
back up.
hearing again, and first to start with apologizing to you, Mr. Hinkle.
Good evening, Council and Mayor Lord. I'd like to talk primarily about 2 things. That's a manner in which Goodyear goes about determining compensation for its employees and the absence of a real emphasis on cost reduction in your budget book. Now, I haven't seen this year's. I have last year's. Comment on that. In 08, Goodyear decided to compare, for compensation, employee compensation purposes, compare itself with 9 larger cities, 9 of the 10 largest cities in Maricopa County. I do not know why you would choose to do that. If you 7 people were the majority shareholders in a small company here in Goodyear, I really doubt if you would say, let's compare wage and benefit levels for our employees with those of, say, a nearby 13,000 employee General Electric plant or an IBM plant or other employers 2, 3, and 4 times larger. I don't see the point in it. I doubt if you would say, let's pay above market. You've directed the HR people to present you with information that gets you to 101% of market. Why? I don't see what that gains us whatsoever. The compensation package that you have, I can't comment on salaries, except I know that about 30% of the 25% of the positions that you have out of 225, 25% of them have a max range of over 100,000. So it would seem like you can stay here and make a pretty good living. Benefit-wise, Goodyear employees work a little over 10 months out of the year and can get 12 months of compensation on average. 12 days of sick pay. You don't have to be here long to get 17 days of vacation, plus holidays, and I guess you're going to add 2 more. So you work 10 months out of the year and get paid for 12. Biggest cost and the biggest difference with the private sector, well, there are 2. One is in pensions. Come July 1st, the employees are going to get a 1% increase because employers are going to have to pay, city employers are going to pay another 1% into pension fund. That gets them up to over 10%. Some of you have your own businesses. If you have a 401k, I question whether you wouldn't be donating 10.25% to your employees' 401k plan. You can only go to 6. And I doubt if you'd find very few employers in Maricopa County who match on a dollar-for-dollar basis.
Mr. Hinkle, could you wrap this up? I'm sorry, the time
Okay.
is up.
Well, yes. And when I went through this book, I look at goals and objectives. Now, I picked out just roughly 25 or so. Most of the goals and objectives are simply a job description. There's very little emphasis in here on cost reduction.
Thank you, Mr. Hinkle.
Okay?
So much for that.
Okay, I'd like to ask for a motion.
Close the public
Oh,
hearing,
I'm
please.
sorry. Where are we?
We had to open it again to hear Mr.
All right,
Hinkle.
that's right. Sorry about that. Close the public hearing. Thank you for the reminder. I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the truth and taxation increase from $123,680. And I would like a second, please.
So moved, Mayor.
Do I hear a second? I heard a motion by Councilman Gelzer and second by Councilwoman Campbell. And so I'd like to ask the clerk for a roll call.
What discussion?
Oh, I'm just trying to hurry this through, aren't I, tonight? Thank you for all supporting me so well. Discussion? Councilman Pizzillo?
Just a couple questions for Larry. Larry, we talked tonight about the property tax, and we talk about how a lot of that stuff gets covered. I guess the question I have is the difference between what we see right now on our secondary levy and what is actually being paid by the GO revenue. The difference, is that water?
Mayor Lord, Councilmember Pizzillo, yes, the total levy is approximately $4.4 million. That will cover the general obligation bonds that are non-utility related. The utility related ones that are GO bonds but were used to acquire infrastructure for water and sewer approximate $5 million. That's what that delta is.
Is it fair to, well, and also isn't there about 50 million of a improvement district in which Westcor's paying the debt service on that?
Yes, that number is not part of the levy, nor is it part of the $9 million in the budget book that's shown. There's about $3.5 million of debt service that is paid for by the property owners surrounding the proposed mall, and that amount is both a revenue and an expenditure in that exact amount.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is out of the $300 million worth of debt service we have, $100 million of it roughly is backed by sales tax, correct?
Approximately $100 million, which represents the PIC bonds. It would be higher. I would probably put it 110 to 115.
All right, as a percentage of that debt service associated with sales tax to the general fund revenue, how do we kind of compare to other jurisdictions as far as percentage of debt to that number from a ratio standpoint?
The general fund debt coverage is the general fund debt service expenditures represent approximately 10% of your general fund revenues. That is very consistent with industry standards for municipalities. It's a little higher than the target that we had. Obviously, when we sold the ballpark financing, our revenue base was considerably higher. But it's still at a manageable level that is consistent with industry standards.
Okay. I guess the other question I have is, as far as the general fund, and I think I probably got a little over the top when we were talking the other stuff, but again, there for the longest time, and again, remember I was on budget. We had to subsidize the enterprise fund through the general fund. Right now, the amount of money that the enterprise fund is being charged back to the general fund, is that overhead support? Well, let me ask you: what is that? What is that money?
again, that money, as you just suggested, it totals about $3.4 million, 3.5, and that is the overhead support to those enterprise funds. That includes the direct costs, such as the billing services, but that also includes indirect costs, such as IT, finance, the human resources element, city manager, city attorney, and so forth.
So that's the enterprise fund's cost of what would it cost for the general fund to provide those type of services to it then?
That's correct.
Okay. There was something else that I had. May come back to me. Thank you, Larry.
Next, Councilwoman Laura Towner.
And this is just on the property tax, right, Madam Mayor?
Pardon me?
We're just on the property tax, right?
Yes.
Okay. My recollection of the meeting is when last year when we reduced it to a 1.4233 rate, that was a holiday, as I think it was. We knew it was only going to be 1 year, and it was pretty clear, and it was in the meeting, it was voted on that it could only be 1 year because we only had the funding. I think Joe presented that very well, that 1 year. So we all knew that this was just a holiday, that it was going to back up. It was never advertised that that's where the rate would be, and I think there might be a misunderstanding and a miscommunication with that. So that was my recollection. My concern is that the primary and the secondary have switched, and I know that's not a good place to be, and with values going down. I also recollect from that meeting that prior to us bringing it down to a 1.42, we were like the third highest property tax. But even at the 1.6, the rate that it's been, we're still having a tax decrease for our citizens. So at this point, I'm okay because the net gain for our citizens, it's just a couple dollars, but it is going down. What I would like to see is us keep on the radar as when our assessments grow, and if I understand the rate levy argument, that we need to keep an eye on that as the assessments grow, as the property values grow, because our underlying asset is less. But as the assessments grow and we get more money, then I would like to see us look to lower that 1.60 and make that a goal in the future. Right now with the property values, I understand we can't do it, and we are having a net decrease, and I don't know if that's totally understood. So I want to be clear if that was everyone else's recollection from that meeting, that it was a holiday, I guess is the best, a 1 year time.
Other comments? Councilman Stipp?
You know, I had a question for Terry, I think, if that's appropriate. Terry, you talked about the rates, et cetera. If we didn't make this rate change to 1.6, what would the result of that be for us this year? And then what impact would that have on us next year or the year after?
Councilman Stipp, I think we have that information.
It would cost approximately $1.18 million.
So that would be a decrease in revenue.
Yes.
And then of 1.8. And if we didn't do this year, what does that do to us next year when it comes to setting the rate, when we're expecting the next bomb to drop because we're always 2 years out?
Jerry, do you have any...
Does that handcuff us in any way?
No, it certainly won't help us. It would hurt us because assuming that assessed values continue to go down, next year's tax levy will undoubtedly have to go up, the rate.
Okay. So then here...
The other thing I would add is that if
Terry,
by
in the
law we
microphone,
can
please.
increase the 2%, if we don't take it this year, then the base becomes lower for the 2% calculation next year.
Okay. So we'd be 2% behind, theoretically. Okay, so here's the rest of my thought. The Citizen Budget Committee spent a great deal of time talking about issues, and we talked about this earlier tonight. One of the recommendations that the Citizen Budget Committee made was to make adjustments to the primary and secondary tax rates to maintain property tax revenue in a way that offsets the effects of changes in assessed evaluation. So the way I'm reading it is we're doing exactly what the Citizens Budget Committee recommended. Is that a fair statement?
I think that's very fair, yes.
And then just for kind of clarification for everybody, the Citizens Budget Committee said this item grew from a suggestion supported by several for the adjustment to the tax rate ceiling to 1.8. So our citizens said, let's raise this to 1.8. Recognizing the difficulty in making that type of change, they felt it was important to encourage a policy to take the allowed levy adjustment annually to maintain property tax revenue consistent with population and economic growth. And the way that I'm looking at the information that was presented earlier, we have seen since 2009 a 9.44% increase in population. And it seems to me that moving this is in keeping with what the Citizen Budget Committee told us. Am I
You are
flown
correct,
off?
Mr.
Of
Stipp.
course, okay. Thank you.
Thank you for that input. Any other questions? Comments? Councilman Pizzillo?
Just one more thing I want to add. Some of our biggest challenges, I guess the city is going to have to take a look at as we look in the future, is not just the dropping of the assessed valuation, is our state legislature, which is also bringing down the percentage that the commercial property is assessed at. In essence, what they're doing is shifting the burden from the commercial tax to the residential. This year, did it go down a half or a point? I'm trying to remember.
A half.
Went down to a half. In essence, unfortunately, this year, commercial was the one, from the numbers that I've seen, is the big hit. They've dropped 25% in assessed valuation. So each year, not only if the assessed valuation continues, and I think next year goes down another 0.5%, till they get down to 16%, you're going to see a shift at behest of our state legislature that's going to shift the property tax from commercial to residential. So, I just throw the challenge out to the staff. The biggest challenge is going to be how we're going to manage that in the future as long as property values keep dropping. But again, I go back to, I'm a levy guy. I never was crazy about the rate even when we had the $1.60 because I'm concerned of what's going up as far as what I'm paying. So again, hopefully we'll have that discussion at another time. But again, that's it.
Is discussion finished?
On this part, yes.
All right. Okay. Then I'd like to ask the clerk for a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Campbell. Councilmember Gilzer.
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Osborne.
Aye.
Councilmember Pizzillo.
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano.
Aye.
Mayor Lord.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. Now we'll go to item B, the adoption of the final budget for 2/11/12. Are you doing this? Or?
There is no presentation. I mean, we made the presentation already, Madam Mayor.
All right. So I will ask the clerk. All right.
I do have someone
Thank
who
you.
would like to comment. Gary Gibbs.
Okay. Mr. Gibbs?
Thank you, Mayor. Council members, Gary Gibbs, 17562 West Polaris Drive, Goodyear. Don't mistake my frequent presence at the microphone tonight as an imitation of Roger Matlin. It is not. It's just that I had some items that piqued my interest. First of all, my heartfelt congratulations to each and every one of you for earlier this evening resisting the temptation to dip into the rainy day fund because I was prepared to rip you a new one if you did. And I think that Councilmember Loretano and Councilmember Osborne were particularly eloquent in their defense of that rainy day fund. I would appreciate you continuing to defend it. The only thing I have to add to tonight's budget discussion is that I request that you send this budget back to the city manager and ask for a new submission. I would like to see the food tax cut in half, and I would like to see the property tax increase that you just approved, that 18 cents shifted to the secondary portion of the tax rather than the primary. Now, of course, if you send it back and tell the city manager to do that, he's going to come back initially with an end-of-the-world scenario. The sky is falling. Play poker with him. Call this bluff. Tell him it's his job to figure out what to cut. You can give him additional instructions. Leave police and fire alone. Public works is important. Everything else is fair game. Get rid of that food tax. Cut it in half now. Get rid of it. Be prepared to cut the other half out next year. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbs. Next?
That's the only one.
That's the end? Okay. Then I would ask the clerk to please read the resolution.
Adopt Resolution 11-1435, determining and adopting the final estimates of proposed expenditures by the City of Goodyear for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2011, and ending June 30, 2012.
Could I have a motion and a second, please?
Madam Mayor, can we make a motion, since the employee compensation was an issue, to take that and vote on that separately? I don't know what the procedure is.
I don't either, so I need to ask.
Those two.
Like we did last year where we took specifics out.
I don't think it's in there.
Not in there.
It's not in there.
You could take it out. Which part are you talking about
Well,
specifically? Is it the?
I don't think this is the part where,
Are you talking about the extra days?
Extra two that actually have no dollar amount to it.
that's,
So is that,
It's really not a budget item.
So it's not
I
a
think
budget item.
that would probably be brought back to you at the next meeting.
Okay, sure.
So that's not part of the budget?
No.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, it's my recollection, no.
It's not it's not an expenditure per se. So as a policy, I don't believe it's not included in the budget in front of you anyway. So it's really a policy item you need to consider separately.
Okay.
I do have one question, or maybe wait.
well, do we have the motion yet?
No, we don't.
No? All right. So I ask for a motion, please.
I move we adopt the final budget.
Do I hear a second? Motion was made by Councilman Pizzillo and second by Councilman Stipp. Open for discussion?
I have one question. This is probably for Larry. Let's see, Larry. Oh, there's Larry. Okay, there's many differences that I've been having to sort out and learn between government finance and regular business finance. And one of the things that I would never do as a business owner would be to hypothetically say, oh, I might make $50 million this next year. In government spending, or not spending, but in government finance, we have to do that, correct? We have to come up with some hypothetical number that says, just in case we get this money, we would have to allocate it somewhere, correct? So bear with me here. So it seems like we have this $50 million imaginary number that gets put in there. Why do we come up with that high of a number, and does it ever actually hit that point? I mean, why do we continually use that high of a number?
Mayor Lord, Vice Mayor Osborne, I'll have to admit that the number, the development of the number is a bit arbitrary. That number was considerably larger, and it was used in past years as we were putting together financing to move, say, on the ballparks. When that money, you didn't know the final cost, you knew something was coming, and it was used for that. This is really just contingency planning. Under state law, we cannot spend any money that is not included in the budget, regardless of source or how much money you have.
So, Larry, so say somebody, which is not going to happen, contributed a grant, some money to us. We couldn't spend it. If we
wouldn't
don't,
be able
we
to
couldn't
spend
spend
it
it. If we get increases, or we have something, or we have some company that wants to come in.
I know that. I just wonder why we always get this incredible number, 50 million. I mean,
Yeah.
who just
And some of that has been in the theory that if you had, for example, a development in the employment corridor, similar on an improvement district, it would run through. We would sell bonds. It would happen. The bottom line is it's contingency planning. There will be and has never been any expenditures out of that without some kind of revenue source that would come in. The dollar amount, I'll acknowledge, is high, and it was very arbitrary, and actually, probably technically, you could knock $40 million off of it tonight, since you already adopted a tentative budget that set your spending cap. You can't exceed what you set in the previous level. But it truly is money that you can only appropriate specifically if you had money in there.
Okay, I had one other question and a comment. Within the Schedule 2 of all revenues, we have in there for her funding of $3.2 million. Are we sure that this is safe?
Yes, we are. I mean, that's
So it's, because I wasn't sure, legislative-wise, I mean,
It's the next time around.
that's a safe number.
That's a safe number, okay. With the work session we had before this, with the weekend, the day retreat that we called our visioning session, something that we've all been trying to discuss and have yet to be able to really, I think, focus on it, has been the city's finances, has been the city's future finances, has been the discussion that we've wanted for 5-year planning, for tax reduction, for, you know, we kept thinking that it was going to be at the retreat. And the retreat was fine for visioning. I mean, we still needed that also. But I still feel that we need to have kind of a financial talk. We need to, I mean, there's so many things that have been coming up, and especially with the new council, that we just need to be able to have that time to think about. I mean, I know it's a crystal ball look still, but there's just certain things that we need to have on our radar. The ballpark with the STA, you know, someday we feel pretty confident that they're going to be able to come back, but it may not be till 2021 till they pay. But these things are, we have to be thinking about as we continue going forward. The valuations of our properties. I mean, there's just so many, you know, moving parts, and I don't feel that we've dedicated a true time for us all to really talk about all of those entities. I was going to use that as follow-up, but really it's still part of this discussion that I think it doesn't change what this budget is, but I really think that it's something we need to discuss.
Mayor Lord, Vice Mayor Osborne, we can certainly plan such a discussion after the break. I mean, I think it would be a very healthy thing as we get into the budget for next year. It would be a perfect discussion to have.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Any other comments? Yes, Councilman Stipp.
It was funny. I met with Rorik today. He said, you know, most council people, when they first start, are quiet for the first 3 months. And
You proved me wrong.
he told me, I don't think that will be you.
We welcome your conversation.
Yeah. Larry, I wish you hadn't sat down. To kind of go back on to what Council or Vice Mayor Osborne was talking about, in this budget, and can we pop up the slide, any of those slides that you had?
Eddie?
Can you go back to slide 12?
Larry, could you work the...
He's got it.
He's working it. Look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. In this scenario, we have the operating budget, which is theoretically our, that's our day-to-day budget. That is what we do business with day in and day out. Everything else is somewhat, with the exception of contingency, and the capital and one-time is dependent upon the revenues coming in from the development, community, et cetera. So that number can fluctuate, except we are not to exceed 101 million. Correct?
Mayor Lord, Councilmember Stipp, that would be an accurate assessment on the capital and one-time, of which 50 million was the amount that Vice Mayor Osborne was previously asking about.
Okay.
The 73 million, just because there gets confusion in amounts, the 73 million is our operating, including all of the funds that include the water and sewer, sewer sanitation activities, not just the general fund.
Okay, thank you. Now, if we go to the next slide, 13, because there's a lot of confusion out on this. If there is a lot of this, and you use the term placeholder during CBC, for example, grants of 10 million. If grants of 10 million don't come in, there's 10 million of expense that isn't going to happen as well.
That is accurate.
And the same thing applies in development impact fees, possible improvements, or developer related. If that money comes in, then it can be spent. But if it never comes in, it does not get spent. So we're not playing, well, I'm thinking it's going to come in, so I'm going to go ahead and spend it anyway.
No.
We're not spending our raise before we get it.
No, absolutely not. Now, you mentioned the development impact fees. Those are not necessarily planned out ahead as compared to the other two. Those are estimates based on building permit estimates, which are fairly conservative.
Okay. So the last
Councilmember
question.
Stipp, excuse me. What you really need to be talking about is the next slide is the expenditures, because this is the revenue.
Okay, correct. So yeah, if we go to the next one, now we start talking about, the contingency is that money that's sitting in the bank. We talked about that earlier. So our capital in one time, and this is the part that moves. If it comes in, it swells. If it doesn't, it shrinks, and we're all set from there. The budget that we're going to pass tonight at $213 million is our not to exceed number. Correct?
That's correct, yes.
So we can, throughout the remainder of this fiscal year, in November, say, boy, we're not feeling really good about this, and we want to cut $5 million out of somewhere. We can do that.
Yes, you
and
can.
And I just throw that number out like I probably should learn to scale down my examples. But
the answer, though, is yes, you can. Right.
We're not locked into spending it, and we're not locked into anything else. And I think we sometimes confuse that with, once we pass the budget, it's start writing check time.
If I can make a qualification, I get a little nervous in that.
When I speak in generalities?
Yeah. That is definitely true in the context of some of the questions that you've been asking about the one-time money and so forth. Where I get a little nervous is that this is your business plan for the upcoming year as it relates to the operations and so forth, and people will be moving forward. If people thought that there could be adjustments mid-year, I would get concerned that things might change, but I think you were more referring to the capital in one time, and that's where I think I would agree with the city manager and say yes.
In a very general perspective is all I'm
Understood.
looking at. I'm trying to equate it for the homeowner, we all anticipate what we're going to have, but when you get your pink slip, things are different. So.
Obviously, if the economy tanks, let's say, we can always make adjustments if we have to. You can always go downwards for any amount. I mean, obviously, it becomes much more difficult for us, but we can do that. And when you have gone a half a year, then you obviously have to make up for a full year within that half a year. But you can always make adjustments downwards.
Go ahead.
Yes. Councilwoman Campbell.
Thank you. I would like to echo what Councilwoman or Vice Mayor Osborne said. I feel we do need a meeting. I would like next year to have perhaps a different timeline than we are doing this year, and we need to have a conversation regarding that if it is possible. And I definitely want more citizen input, and that's what I would like to see is more citizens inputting on this budget.
Councilman Pizzillo?
Just real quick. As you mentioned earlier, this is a business plan, and whether it's in my experience, whether it's been business when I'm teaching a class or whether it happens to be in government, everything's driven by revenues. To follow up what Councilmember Stipp says, if for some reason the revenues don't come in, since everything's driven off of that, you got to make the adjustments to the expenditure side. So being a plan, and I'm knowing where some of these holding spots are in, that's why I always get nervous when people compare estimated expenses to budgeted, because they're two different animals. Especially to me, it's actuals to actuals. That'll tell you where you're going from one period to another. Just like this budget that you have here, even for the $73 million operating, my gut tells me that's the max. You'll come in under that. You can't go over that, so you'll come in more than likely under that. So, I think the key is it's like anything else in your department there, Larry. The quicker they see trends changing, like the manager says, the quicker you adjust, the better off. If you wait 6 months on something that has been in business or going down since month one, you're in trouble. So, that's what it all boils down to. I'm pleased to the part that we're starting to bring down the food tax. From my perspective, the one thing I mentioned early on going in at the beginning was I was hoping we could get a budget without a structural deficit. That I'm very pleased about. Not only that, we're starting to bring down the temporary sales tax. For me to get that going, we're going to have to grow. We're going to have to grow our base. I mean, we're not going to be able to keep raising things. We're going to have to grow our base, or be more efficient and start bringing down some of our costs. So just like any plan, I just hope you continue to look for those efficiencies and cost savings so that we have more savings at the end of the year. So with that said, pass it on.
Other comments? Councilwoman Loretano?
When we talked about lowering the food tax, one thing we talked about is that there was no baseline for it. So we didn't know exactly the impact on the budget, and we asked that it to be reviewed in, I think it was 6 months. And that's one thing I want to make sure that we do once we get some data, a baseline on that. How is there room in the budget to adjust that? Because that's one thing that we asked for, was we want to bring that down lower, but since we didn't have a baseline for it.
I would say yes, we'd always have to have some room to make adjustments. We will know, this doesn't even take effect till September, I think it is. So then 6 months from there, we will see where it's headed. But obviously, we will have to take action if it is way more than we anticipate or whatever.
And then my other question is, with regard to the extra, the emergency tax that we talked a little bit about before, I would like to have the retreat and discuss the taxes, because I think from talking to you, that we're only not in a structural deficit because of that 0.5% right now. And when that comes up for the relook to review that, I think we need to have some sort of plan or some sort of idea where can we go, and I think that's what we need to have the retreat. And although it was interesting, the retreat, I would have liked to see a lot more substance. I think we do need to have that conversation here so we can get some sort of backup plan. How is it going to go? How are we going to do this? Rather than, and I agree with Councilman Campbell that we also need to have a little bit more of a timeline on this, so we can. Things are changing swifter now with the economy, so I'd like to have that conversation earlier rather than later.
So what you're saying is that you don't want it included in the final budget talks like we have. You want it early on in the year, where we can sit down and look at a strategic plan, and everybody will be able to vet what their feelings are on this.
Certainly.
I know it's difficult because you kind of want a perspective of what's happening financially out there, but I think this is basically more policy and where you think we want us to go. So I think that would be most helpful. One comment, Councilwoman Campbell, when you say you want more public input, I'm asking you and Councilwoman Loretano, how was your event that you had up at Australia? When you invited the residents in to talk about things. How many people showed up?
We had 11 people. It didn't get out, and you've also got the August summer. But I found it was very interesting to hear what people had to say. There's a lot of concern out there, and you can't go around being Pollyanna. And I think people are concerned. The economy is not picking up, and that's what we heard, a lot of concerns. And it wasn't bashing city government. I think it's just concerns with their lives and what's going on, and want to make sure we were listening. And we prepared, and we're working on getting answers to all the questions to send out to all the residents. Yeah, we're going back again.
Going back again. Okay, Councilwoman Osborne?
I just had one follow-up question. Sherry actually asked, Ms. Loretano asked the right question about looking back at the food tax in 6 months, because I thought that was the case. But, now that when we did talk about putting this into effect, and I know it doesn't start till September, but say mid-year, hypothetically, say we find out that it was only $200,000, and we had, I think, scheduled for like $365,000. $375. Okay. This tax committee, whatever that is for the state that you have to put this through, is the city only allowed to lower?
Is this model city tax code she's talking about?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, thank you. I couldn't remember what it was called. are you would a city be only allowed to lower something once a
I'd
year?
prefer if Larry answered
Yeah,
that.
I'm just curious.
There are no rules that require that. However, I would be very cautionary on the business community. They really don't
I
like
understand that.
multiple adjustments. The first one has to go through the commission. Rate changes don't have to go through the commission. So we can do that, but I'm going to suggest by the time we have the information, it's going to be close to the following budget year. You can start doing direction and tying it to the following budget year, and you're going to really have 9 months difference there, which I think will be okay.
Well, I just asked the question because I didn't know anything about what that model tax
Well,
committee
isn't there
did,
some
and so-
changes being made in that? Wasn't there some items on the model city tax code right now brought up by the legislature? So I'm not sure where we are on the model city tax code.
The model city tax code today exists as it is. By a year from now, will be different.
That's exactly right,
Through,
and that's why
legislative proposals.
through the legislative action. So I would certainly we need that action to take place so that we have a clear picture of what it means. So, any other input? If not, I'm going to ask the clerk for roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Gilzer,
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Osborne,
Aye.
Councilmember Pizzillo,
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano,
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell, Mayor Lord,
Aye.
passes 7-0.
All right, let's go to C, adjustments to the Goodyear Municipal User Fee Schedule. Terry Canada will present. Is that true, or are you present? Oh.
I apologize. I thought this was on consent.
It's all right. It's been a long day for you.
Just according to state statute, we have to bring this back to you. We had.
Sorry, Terry, you're going to have to speak in. I can't hear you. Okay.
According to state law, we have to bring back changes to the user fee rates to you. And so in accordance with the budget and the work sessions that we had in direction from council to rescind, if you would, the user fee for fire inspection fees. It's actually the first and the second one that we're going to rescind, so that's what this change is for.
Okay.
And so we will be changing the resolution or the ordinance?
Resolution.
The resolution, so that the fees will be rescinded.
Okay, good. Is there anybody do we have any cards that anybody wants to make? Oh, okay. Then I'd the clerk to read the resolution, please.
Adopt Resolution 11-1436, rescinding municipal user fees number 47 and 48 in the Goodyear Municipal User Fee Schedule adopted by Resolution 10-1357 for fire inspection, business occupancy, initial checks, and rechecks, providing for severability and an effective date.
Thank you. Could I ask for a motion, please?
Mayor Lord, I so move.
Second?
Second.
It was right on time, both of you. The motion was made by Councilwoman Campbell, and a second by, I'm sorry? Oh, well, thank you, Joe. And seconded by Vice Mayor Osborne. Open for discussion? Councilman Stipp?
Thank you.
That was my comment.
Oh, thank you. I didn't hear that.
That's his comment. Thank you.
Well, absolutely, and I hope that the public is listening out there. I'm hoping you're writing this one down and giving us a gold star, because we heard your request, and we all came to consensus and made it happen. Well, almost. We'll have to vote on this yet. So I thank staff for the research into it and helping us with this. So I need a roll call vote, please, from City Clerk.
Councilmember Stipp,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Osborne,
Aye.
Councilmember Pizzillo,
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano,
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell, Councilmember Gilzer,
Aye.
Mayor Lord.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's go on to, yes, you're right. Item D, amend Article 7, Section 7.5 of the zoning ordinance regarding vehicle signs. And Joe Schmidt will do the presentation.
Mayor and council members, back in November of last year, the council directed staff to prepare an amendment to the zoning ordinance to clarify the regulations pertaining to vehicle signs in response to a comment that was made during the hearing at which new temporary sign regulations were adopted. The current ordinance already allows vehicles with signs affixed to them, but there was testimony regarding an instance where a business owner was cited for parking his passenger vehicle that was fully wrapped with a vinyl sign in a parking lot at a commercial center, but outside of a designated parking space. Based on the language in the current ordinance, it was determined that the primary purpose for parking the vehicle in that manner was for it to function as a sign, and that is prohibited by the current ordinance. The proposed ordinance has been drafted to allow passenger vehicles, but not trucks, that have signs painted on them or otherwise applied to them to be parked on private property outside of a delineated parking space, provided the vehicle is parked on a hard surface and does not interfere with movement of traffic. This change to the ordinance would provide the city's code compliance officers with greater flexibility when enforcing the prohibition on vehicle signs. The Planning and Zoning Commission, at its regular meeting on May 18th, conducted a public hearing on the proposed text amendment. At that meeting, there was one person who appeared in support of the proposed change. And at that meeting, the Commission recommended approval of the text amendment by a unanimous vote of 7-0. So, with that said, I would stand for any questions and ask for you to consider adoption of the proposed ordinance.
Is there anyone in the audience who?
Yes, I do have one speaker card, David Wilson.
Mr. Wilson?
Evening, Mayor, Georgia Lord, and Council. David Wilson, 3810 South Australia Parkway, David Gerard Salon. I am very much in favor of this, especially to help small businesses get their names out there. There is not going to be a mess on the streets because there is no street parking. I'm in favor of it, and I was the one at the town meeting. And Joe, it was very difficult for him to do the verbiage on it, but he did do a wonderful job. And he did specify out trucks, which is great.
Thank you. And thank you for your persistence also.
Thank you.
That was it?
Yes.
I'll ask the city clerk, please read the ordinance.
Adopt Ordinance 11-1241, amending Article 7-5 of Article 7 of the zoning ordinance of the City of Goodyear, Arizona, adopted May 24th, 1999, as amended, to amend the definition for vehicle sign to exempt certain types of vehicles with signs from the presumption that they are vehicle signs and therefore prohibited, providing for separability, and providing for an effective date.
Could I have a motion, please, and a second?
So moved.
Second.
I hear a motion from Councilman Stipp and second by Councilman Loretano. Open for discussion. I'm going to start down there. I want to get the talking one, the one that's been talking most of the scene. We're going to give him first. Councilman Stipp.
Yeah, I'm going to be quick. First, I definitely want to thank the P&Z committee or commission. They asked a lot of the same questions that I had as I was reviewing this. The one question that didn't get asked is, what is going to prohibit somebody from parking a vehicle at a different location than the actual business? Is there anything that, the parking lot across the street from City Hall is, at JB's, and there's nobody there, and we could have vehicles parked all over advertising for something else. Does that concern anybody? I don't know if I'm concerned. Do you?
Well, it's a private vehicle, right?
Mayor Lord, Councilmember Stipp, we don't regulate it right now. If somebody is using their vehicle, particularly in the course of the day, and they're parked in a lawful parking space, they're unmolested, so to speak. But I think if someone deliberately parks on somebody else's property for the purpose of advertising, we probably could find something to enforce on that, although the private property owner would probably try to find something first to cause them to have that removed. So I think there's probably, between the two, there would be a way to solve it.
Yeah, I was just curious, so we can deal with it if it becomes a problem later.
Yeah. This is some of the private vehicles, and they drive them around. I think at Chick-fil-A, a lot of times the manager is driving the truck around and
It's more of a covenant not to compete.
Yeah.
So, like in Mr. Gerard's salon, if some other hair salon decided to park their signed vehicle,
then that's a pretty good.
That would be, I think that's kind of what you were going. Well, no, but also just regular signage like that. Yeah.
I didn't want to see a great location get absolutely polluted with now vehicles. And I don't think it'll happen. And I've seen the car, and I think it's a great help for our business community.
Who else had a comment? Vice Mayor Osborne?
Okay, so just to make sure that I understand everything in here, it's clarified that the vehicle has to be running, it has to be licensed, okay, so it's not going to be sitting there gathering cobwebs. And it also, on here it stated something about a trailer, but it can't be a trailer that has a sign, correct?
Right.
All right. Okay. That's good. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else?
I just have a comment.
Councilwoman Loretano?
I just want to thank you for coming up to this. It looks good. The other ones seem to just be a little outdated, so I think we've kind of moved up to what people are using now.
Councilman Pizzillo?
Just real quick, I want to thank you for taking care of this.
I want to thank you, too. This was important, and I think we all realize that, and it did take a toll on some of our businesses and individuals, and we hope this is rectified with that, and we hope business increases. So that was the bottom line. Thank you. So, clerk, roll call.
Vice Mayor Osborne.
Aye.
Councilmember Pizzillo.
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano.
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
Councilmember Gelzer.
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp.
Aye.
Mayor Lord.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Oh, yes.
Mayor Lord,
I'm sorry, the lawyer has.
Yeah.
there is some confusion whether or not the consent item H was included in the motion, so, and we can't go back and listen to the tape yet, so would it be all right if we would?
We did.
Oh,
you
we
need
did.
To, you need to approve item H. It wasn't included.
So we need a motion to approve 7H.
7H.
Mayor Lord, I so move.
Wait a minute. 7H was, that
Is
wasn't that
the
the banner
pass-through
health?
Pass-through
tribal
grant.
funding for,
Well, okay.
It was
For
very
Banner.
confusing with all of them being.
okay, all right.
So motion by Councilmember
Campbell,
Campbell.
and second by
Second.
Vice Mayor Osborne. Do I need a roll call since we've done that? No.
Just
All
all
in
in
favor,
favor.
say aye.
Aye.
Wait.
Opposed?
Hold on.
What?
Yes, you do. It's a resolution.
No.
We'll get this right by the end of the night.
Councilmember Pizzillo.
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano.
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
Councilmember Gelzer.
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Osborne.
Aye.
Mayor Lord.
Aye.
It passes 7-0.
Okay, well, let's go to the last item on. Current communications from the council. Anybody would like to talk about some things that went on? Councilman Loretano?
Well, we talked a little bit about it. We attended a kind of meet and greet with the community up in Estrella, and we're going to do that again. And I think I'd like to hit some of the other communities. I know Councilwoman Campbell would as well, and maybe mix it up a little with different council people, because it's nice to have different ideas of what's going on with different people, and it's good rather than just one person going out. Then we kind of can converse a little, and I think it went really well. And then I attended the chamber dinner, and that was very nice. So.
Any other comments? Councilwoman Campbell?
If you don't mind, Mayor Lord and everyone, I attended the newly elected training meeting, a 2-day event for newly elected council members. I attended the Goodyear Citizens Committee, the All Faith Community Roundtable, and Goodyear Centennial Committee meeting. I attended the Teen Lifeline 25th anniversary celebration and was very pleased to accept a certificate of appreciation to our city for our support of that organization. I attended the 2011 World Elder Abuse Awareness Day event in Maricopa County. And I also attended the YMCA open house on Saturday, the GAIN planning event meeting, the semi-annual meeting of all Goodyear captains and co-captains of our neighborhood program, and last but not least, I attended the Goodyear Police Department ComStat briefing in the last 2 weeks.
Any other?
I forgot to write it down.
Well, I just wanted, did you all get this in your box on Arizona foreclosure prevention? No. All right, I gave it to Sandra, so,
We'll check on it, Madam
check.
Mayor.
I had to give, Mayor Lopez Rogers invited me to this, and I had to give a very short talk. But it's a very worthwhile information workbook, and we partnered with Avondale for this workshop, and there were a number of people, and it was very, very well organized, and so it was really worth our partnering and contributing to it. So I want you to be sure you read that. I also had a panel discussion on Channel 11 with Mayor Scruggs and Mayor Meck, and that was interesting to be. I'm not even sure when it's going to be shown, but so it's my second one, so I'm getting used to them now. I did pull something out of the paper, and I want to comment on it because it does concern me, and I don't know if you read it today in the East Valley section, but they talk about medical pot group raided. And the Gilbert police, they had 5 arrests for marijuana plants reportedly being grown for sale at the office of the Medical Marijuana Advocacy Group. It was a tip from a Gilbert informant, and the detectives observed several people smoking and purchasing marijuana in the office. 8 people present during the raid, only 2 were able to produce a valid medical marijuana card. You know, we talked about this before, and there definitely is a concern. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, and that we need to be tracking what's going on in the other cities. Yes.
There was also the shooting, too.
Yeah. Okay. Would you like to speak to that?
There was a shooting. Someone was growing marijuana. I think it was in Phoenix.
Can you do that in microphone?
There was also a shooting that someone was growing marijuana, and he advertised it on Craigslist, and he was licensed by the state, and then tried to get robbed, and there was a person killed.
Yeah. So I was very concerned about that. Any other comments?
I have one comment. I'm
yes.
sorry. One comment. You know, I would just like to ask the public to watch for these copper thieves that continue to get into not only city property and just electrical box, everything around. It's just so unfortunate, but you know, we need the citizens' help to really call out to the officers when they see something that's just not right. We need that help. So, thanks.
All right, thank you. Manager summary?
The only things I'd like to mention this evening are to point out the 3 yellow papers that have been included in your packet, the kiosk sign program status, the June 11th City Council advance notes, and the 2011 legislative wrap-up report. That's all I have this evening.
I read
Madam
those.
Mayor.
Thank you very much. Okay, just to look at the next council meeting, it will be July 11th, and the council will then be on recess until August 21st. So please tell your, yes, I'm
There's
sorry.
a follow-up.
Pardon, oh, follow-up, okay.
Can I ask a
Sure you can.
I already asked about a financial workshop for all this to discuss, but you know, it kind of hit me with the ballpark and the contracts that we have with the ball teams, that things are starting to come into play, that we're noticing hidden costs of things, you know. And I know you guys noticed it early on with the charges for the credit card usage, but there's other things that I recall in those contracts that maybe is the time to be discussing them. And one, for example, I recall, if I'm not mistaken, the production of the team programs. We make them, but the teams get half the profit. And so there's just things like that. I'd like to hear if some of those things need to be revisited and discussed. And so that was just some
We'll make
follow-up.
sure to include
I
that.
would just like to remind the council that every time you open up a contract for renegotiation, prices can go up. And so don't think it always goes down when, you know, it's not
Ask
always
for
in our
revisiting.
favor. You know, every time, and when you revisit things, oftentimes you get whacked with other fees that the other party wants to dump on our heads. So sometimes these contracts have been negotiated, and maybe we should leave well enough alone before we start getting into, you know, some things that maybe should be left to staff.
I'm not saying I'm going to be looking at it. I'm asking that staff just look at it. And that's, you know what? That's in our best interest. We should always be doing that, especially with the price that everything is occurring on.
I'm sure staff is
And
looking at it.
I appreciate that comment, Gary, because you are correct. Sometimes it isn't in the best interest for us, and so we don't go down that road. You know, I get that.
Mayor?
Any other?
For
Yes,
those
Councilman.
of us that are new, though, on council, this would be very important to us. And I think we need to do it so that we understand everything that's on the table, because we have heard bits and pieces, and we don't really understand all of it. Councilmember Gelser has been in a position where he probably knows more about it than any of us right here. I want to know more, and I think it would be great for the council to have a separate workshop, retreat, whatever it is, so that we can talk about the ballpark and everything about it, the contracts, what we expect, the whole ball of wax.
It is interesting, and I think about it, City Manager, that most of these people weren't around or weren't on the council when all this came about. You know, they weren't. And so I'm sure you have a lot of questions. So I think for the comfort level, it's probably a really good idea to get you all up to snuff. I do just want to say something publicly. Please, I don't want us to give the impression that staff is not there and available to brief you on any subject during the week that you want to call them up on the telephone and set time aside. They will set you in the room and they will brief you and they will update you. So, you know, sometimes when you come here, I understand that it's good to come here sometimes even after they've briefed you and ask the question publicly so that the public then can be a part of the conversation you have. I don't want us to leave here tonight with the impression that staff isn't there and helping us and giving us the information. It's public information, so it is there. I just want to clarify that.
Madam Mayor, may I?
Yes.
Maybe just a simple summary of this is what the ball teams are responsible for, and this is what the city is responsible for. I don't know if it's that simple or not. And I'm
It
looking
isn't,
at the
but
heads
we
going,
can
no.
provide it to you.
They can do anything.
I know, but
I have confidence in them.
It always comes at an expense of time. But I did have one other follow-up that we've been talking about it and around it is this compensation classification issue. I thought I had heard that it was going to come up later in the year.
July 11th, we'll have a motion on the council's agenda for your action, because the only way that there's, quote, no cost to this is if the staff can plan the 2 extra days, the vacation days, such that they can schedule them without having an impact on the operations.
No.
If we were to wait for 6 months, for example, there would be a cost to it.
Yeah, no, I'm not referring to that. I'm referring to the salary structure discussion that Mr. Hinkle has raised earlier.
That was in the budget. That was part of the in the budget that we passed. We actually authorized the city manager to move the fire
Correct.
people and the engineers and the captains and the battalion chiefs and the lower level PD people adjust their salary in the budget.
Yes, I completely understand, but I think we've got the other issue that remains with this is verification of our comparisons, answering the question, how did we get to this? I know that there was a discussion at council about 16 steps versus 8 steps versus that's not on the radar that I can tell right now. And I guess that's the question that I'm asking is, and that sounds like obviously well after break and that kind of thing. And memory isn't serving me very well right now. I thought you said, Mr. Fischbach, that it was going to be later in the year that you would put something together.
We can certainly do that, Mr. Stipp, yes. if the council wants that, and I assume you do, so.
Okay.
That was.
All right,
that was
now
it.
you are aware we have a special meeting yet to go. So I will adjourn this meeting and start the new one, all right? This meeting is